Good day. My name is Dr. Brian Lane, and I'm the director of the internationally ranked debate program at the University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a debate for candidates running for the office of the President of the Association of Professional Flight Attendants in 2016. Now, in just a moment, you'll hear two candidates asking for your vote in this election for the organization. Before we do that, I'll go over the format and discuss our audience members' rules. The format for today's debate will feature both speakers in alternating rounds. Prior to this afternoon, each candidate submitted 6 questions to me, your moderator, and of these I selected 3 from each candidate, and those will serve as the majority of our debate today. Each candidate will have an opportunity to give a brief opening and closing statement. We'll then proceed to each of these questions in turn. For each of them, I'll ask the candidate all 6 questions, and every candidate will have 2 minutes to give an answer to the initial question, and then each candidate will have 1 minute to rebut the answer his opponent gave. There should be no recording of this debate, I'll remind everyone. Any recordings will be asked to leave the room. Cell phones, smartphones, laptops, iPads, similar devices have to be turned off. Also, I'll ask the members of our audience to maintain a professional decorum, which means no heckling, please, and no disturbance during the debate. Without further ado, allow me to introduce our presidential candidates. Before the debate, we tossed a coin, and Mr. Ross elected to speak first. So, Mr. Ross, your opening statement.
Hi, I'm Bob Ross. I'm married. I've got 2 young kids. I started my career when I was 24 years old. I've been flying now for 32 years, and believe it or not, I still enjoy my job. I fly over 100 hours a month, every month, and I know what you all do. I was going to have a written opening statement, but I think I'm just going to go off the cuff and tell you that I know what you guys are going through out there because I fly the line. I'm out there with you with the creeping delays, catering issues. I'm out there of duty days of 12 and 14 hours when you're paid for 5 or 6. I'm just as disenfranchised as the rest of you. And I felt that it's time for somebody to stand up and try to do something about it. And that's the reason that I'm here, running for president. I believe that I have the vision, the passion, and the ability to lead this union in a new direction. It's a new direction of hope and a new direction of respect. And I'm looking forward to being the next president of APFA. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Hancock, your opening remarks, please.
Thank you, Professor. This runoff election has set up the perfect question for the APFA membership for this time. Do we want to continue being angry about the past? And believe me, there is a lot to be angry about. Or do we want to turn to the future and put in place effective leadership that can start to recover some of our devastating losses? Are we going to vote angry, or are we going to vote smart? Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was one of the first B-scale flight attendants, and I was so unhappy. I ran for the very next negotiating team and was elected as a 2-year flight attendant, despite the fact the sitting president said, don't vote for this guy. But for me, the work is more important than the politics. Oh, and that was an awful, horrible negotiations. Bob even talks about in his campaign material how difficult it was to be a strike captain with a looming Christmas strike and a divided membership. But we got a B-scale merge, and we got it in the life of the contract. Many of you may have heard about, or perhaps even remember, the DFW-20. I and 19 of my fellow union members were fired by this company for union activity. I know what it is to step up for your union and to be out there with only the lifeline of your union, dependent on the skill and the smarts and the passion of your union rep, to have any hope to continue in this job you love. I've also been that union rep, knowing that my ability to effectively represent a flight attendant is the only thing between them and a terrible tumble in their whole life. I don't discount or disrespect the fears and anxiety in either role. I got hooked on negotiations. I served on 2 negotiating teams and was the national strike coordinator twice. In 1993, when the negotiating team had to decide to take our union out on strike, I was there making the difficult decision. And then I had what I call my midlife crisis. I know you're supposed to buy a Porsche and date sweet young things. I went to law school. Trust me, the Porsche would have been a lot cheaper. But I wanted to learn to think like a lawyer, and I did. Union work wears you out at times, and so I escape back to the line. I cycle in and out, fly my trips, and work 1 or 2 days a week at my small law practice in Dallas, primarily public interest work, like the Legal Hospice of Texas, where I'm a volunteer attorney and a board member. We provide estate planning services for indigent, terminally ill people in north central Texas. For the last several years, I've been the APFA retirement specialist and the bankruptcy 1114 committee. All of these skills and experiences make me uniquely qualified to be your APFA president. And I hope through this debate you learn more about me, my values, and my vision that I will bring to the many issues we will face in the next 4 years.
All right. Thank you both for that opening statement, gentlemen. We'll proceed now to our issues for the debate. Again, I'll ask a question. You'll both have an opportunity to answer.
Sure.
So without further ado, let me ask the first question. Again, these are selected by our candidates. What are your plans to rebuild the APFA into a new and improved union, engage the members who have become disenfranchised, as illustrated by the low voter turnout, and restore confidence in the APFA, as it's going to be a complete change to become a membership-driven union? Mr. Ross, we'll start with you. How about 2 minutes on that question?
Great, and that's a great question. And I think one of the first things we have to do in order to rebuild a union is actually admit that there's a problem. And that's what I'm here for. It's real easy to just decide whether you're going to get over it immediately and move on. There's some real issues going on that I'm here to address. I think that one of the biggest things that we have to do is we've got to bring this divide together. The last decade and a half, I have watched this union crumble into a splintered, divided, and angry membership whose voices have not been heard. And I think it's time that we actually admit the fact that that's happening out there and stop the attitude where we just get over it and we move on. I believe the membership deserves a voice, and I believe that they think it's missing. One of the things that we need to do is take a look at some of the divisions here in the APFA and bring in new bodies, bring in new people with fresh ideas. We need to address the legacy US, the new higher flight attendants, the ones who are looking for a graceful ending to their career, and the ones who are hoping to make this a career. And we need to make them a part of the voice at APFA. And I'm here to help them do that. One of the other reasons that I'm here is because I feel that the membership out here, when it comes to an election process, a voting, balloting process, their voice has been lost. I want to assure them that with me in office, their voice will always be heard and given back to them. They own this union, and it needs to be given back to the membership. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Ross. All right, Mr. Hancock, the same question. What are your plans to rebuild into a new and improved union?
Well, you rebuild a new and improved union when you establish trust with the membership. We have lost the trust of most of our members, and frankly, rightly so. There's been a lot of things that have gone on that should not have gone on. Now, how do you get trust? You earn it. And you earn trust by talking to your members, telling them what's going on, listening to what they want to do, responding to their desires. You have a fully transparent decision-making process, and that means stop going into closed session at the drop of a hat. You know, it's kind of like a crew. When we get on an airplane, you don't know some of these people. You may never have seen them before in your life, and yet you have to work together. And it may be that your life depends on the skill and trust you can place in that fellow flight attendant. Likewise, as a crew running union headquarters, we need to be able to trust each other and to stop attacking each other. One of the things I am most proud of is in my career is that over the last 30 years, I have worked with every APFA administration. I have been appointed to some position, not because I was politically aligned with every APFA administration, but because I think the work is more important than the politics. I'm the only candidate that signed up with a slate that included 50% LUS and 50% LAA. We are going to become one union. And we're not going to do that as long as we continue to exclude and push away our LUS brothers and sisters. I'm a bit of a radical in that I think that the membership should get to vote on changes to their hours of service, working conditions, and wages. Their vote should count, and that count should control.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hancock. Gentlemen, our format allows for the direct rebuttal of answers. So, Mr. Ross, would you like a minute to respond to Mr. Hancock's answer on the new and improved union?
I actually would. Thank you. I wanted to touch on one of the things Mr. Patrick said that he would start to do is by listening to the membership. And then his next words was tell them what's going on. The membership knows what's going on, Mr. Patrick. They need to be telling the APFA what's going on, and the APFA needs to be listening to the membership, and that's what's been missing here. I did decide to run as an independent without a slate, and I did that on purpose because I can work with anyone, and I intend to work with everyone. And I'm hoping that whoever steps up, whoever's elected here, has the same attitude that I am, ready to roll up your sleeves, work together, reach across the aisles, and fix this union.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Hancock, you also have a minute to respond to Mr. Ross's questions, or answers, I'm sorry.
Thank you. The world is changing, and the way we communicate is changing. And one thing that I think our union has not done well is keep up with the change. I joke about how we as an institution are pretty dependent on voicemail and email. I have friends who have not checked their voicemail in 2 years and their email in 6 months. That's not where we as an institution need to be. That's not how you communicate with your members. We need to do a much better job on our membership engagement, and I will commit to making that engagement happen.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Well, gentlemen, that was our first question. So we've successfully gone through one of 6. We'll head into our second question now. It's very straightforward.
Yeah.
Would you favor or oppose a merger with the AFA, the Association of Flight Attendants? This time we'll start with Mr. Hancock. You've got 2 minutes to answer that question.
Thank you, Professor. If the question comes up in my administration, I commit to you there will be no backroom deals on representation. The membership will get to decide, and that's the way it should be. As to my opinion, I love my brothers and sisters at other unions, and particularly at AFA. I just don't want to get married. We've done some great work working together on issues of mutual concern, and that model has seemed to work well for us so far. I am going to co-opt some of their best practices. I think APFA is now large enough that we can have an in-house attorney. And there's some real advantages to an in-house attorney. You have to bring them up to speed for every single case. I'd like to explain a little different, putting on my professor hat for a second, about the differences between the APFA and the AFA. I liken it to the governments of the US and the UK. In the US, we directly elect our Congress and we directly elect our administration, our president. And that provides a great balance of power between those two. In the UK, the citizens elect the parliament and parliament selects the prime minister. And that's pretty much the way they work at AFA. And honest people can disagree about which is the better system. I tend to look at markers of efficiency. For example, AFA is handling the United Continental merger that has to merge their seniority, has to get a joint collective bargaining agreement, and they've been working on that project for 8 years. Closer to home, the America West US Air merger, their joint CBA took 7+ years before the members got the benefit of that agreement. At APFA, it took 8 months. I think I can decide with just looking at the product of work output which is the better system for us.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Mr. Ross, the same question. Would you favor or oppose a merger with the AFA? 2 minutes, sir.
Well, to begin with, I'm running for the president of the APFA. And that's all I can do right now is run for that presidency position. That's what I know. I've been flying for 32 years. I started out my career working right here in APFA. That is my union career, working the scheduling contract desk. My wife worked right alongside me. I know APFA. I'm not afraid of AFA. And I'm not afraid of a merge. But right now we're here to fix APFA. We as a membership have to do just like in society. We have to evolve. I'm proposing that we fix this membership first, that we solidify, and we decide as a membership which direction we're going to go from there. But that it happens organically. It happens from within. When we're combined, when we think collectively, there's no outside divisions, there's no outside agendas. This is done organically from inside, without design, then the membership will decide. And I'll stand by the membership at whatever direction they go. We have our problems with the US, we have our problems with AA. We can solve those problems, and we can start right here at APFA, because that's who we are. And we need to consider the fact that Phoenix flight attendants came from an entirely different system as well. And I think that they feel a little bit left out in the whole ballgame. Now, it's not a matter of whether one airline took 7 years, one took 6 years, 8 years, or 6 months. If in the end, a forced marriage in 6 months has got us this division, then maybe what we need to do is step back a little bit and figure out what we did wrong at first, fix those things, and then move on.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Again, we have 1 minute to rebut the answer from the opponent. We'll start with Mr. Hancock this time.
Thank you, Professor. Well, Bob, I would invite you to go talk to those Phoenix flight attendants and find out whether they thought waiting 7 years for the benefit of the new contract was worthwhile. Yes, the 8 months that we were able to do it, there are still issues that we have not cleaned up. But we are all receiving the benefit of our joint collective bargaining agreement. I, for one, do not want to go back to LBFO wages. I'm enjoying the benefits of that contract. I know what you said 32 years ago, and he's 1 year senior to me, so I note that. And one of these days, I will be senior.
Mr. Ross, 1 minute.
Well, I'm hoping that you are, and that'll be by me not being here. But until then, I'm not suggesting that a forced marriage is the way to go, and I'm not suggesting that a long engagement is the way either. But I do know that a forced marriage never, ever, and by the way, I am married, so I'm not afraid of marriage. But a forced marriage is not the answer if the right practices are not put in place. I personally think that we benefited hugely from the Red Book, and I think that we need people within the APFA here to sit side by side with our scheduling contract coordinators to explain the Red Book to the flight attendants at AA so that they understand the benefits of it, because there are benefits to it, huge benefits over what we had. And they've received the benefits of the pay structure at APFA brought forward during the LBFO. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That's our second question, so we'll move on to question number 3. I'm not very good with fractions, but I think we're 2/6 of the way through. Our third question, a little more straightforward. We have a large number of flight attendants that are still serving reserve, and more to come with the current wave of hiring from Legacy American. Considering the hardships that our reserve flight attendants are subjected to, what would you do to improve this already stressful yet necessary aspect of our job? This time we'll start with Mr. Ross again. 2 minutes, sir.
Well, because I've flown a great deal of almost every one of my 32 years, a lot of those were on reserve. And so I understand the reserve part of it. I have not forgotten. And one of the things on reserve is they deserve a better quality of life while they're on reserve. They need to have some kind of a financial stability from month to month to make up for all the sacrifices that they do, for all the trips they get called out on, which actually allows for flexibility of our regular flight attendants. Without the reserve flight attendants, where would we be? I believe that the reserve flight attendants need a hard 12 days off. No 4 days of rolling. They need to know what days they have off. They need to know what days they're accountable. I believe that they need an increase in their guarantee of at least 80 hours a month that they can't lose for all that unproductive time that they give on the phone, calling their bids. I believe that they need to be compensated for all that lost time by having a guaranteed structured paycheck. And I believe they need holiday pay that encompasses those days that they're sitting at home and they don't get called out. So therefore, they're not entitled to holiday pay. And I believe that they need to be available to have AM, PM at the bidding of each month rather than on a day-to-day basis. I think that's going to hugely increase their flexibilities, their lives, their families, and make it just a little bit easier for those that are on reserve. And believe me, there's a lot more things that we need to look at. I definitely want to put a reserve committee together that is completely focused on our reserve flight attendants and are available to those flight attendants the same way they are 24/7, 365.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Hancock, same question. How about flight attendants in reserve?
Thank you, Professor. I stayed domestic for the longest time because after a while, I got off reserve and I didn't want to go to international because I thought I was allergic to reserve. And when reserve finally got back on reserve on domestic, I went to international. When you talk to reserves about what can we do to make your life better, the most common answer is make somebody else do it. But if we are going to have our flight attendants do it, somebody in the bargaining corps is going to have to do it. One of the ideas that has been implemented at other airlines is like the Delta A days. Delta A days are where senior people serve 3 days of reserve during the month. That was discussed during our last round of negotiations, and our people did not want to go there. So, if you're not going to be able to shift who does reserve, you have to be able to make reserve better. And one of the ways to make it better is to require fewer reserves. How do you do that? You have a much more efficient system for getting rid of uncovered trips. For instance, in the preferential bidding system with the trip trade system, there are ways that trips that would otherwise end up being covered by reserve can be covered by line flight attendants that want to do the flying, not reserves that don't want to do the flying. You can also improve reserve by giving reserves more control over their trips. Right now, I kind of get to put in preferences, but I got a bucket, so that's and don't really feel like I'm getting much control. With our new system, there is much better bidding daily for the trips that you want. And the real issue is, looking at reserve, is that the reserve issue on LUS and the reserve issue on LAA are driven by totally different reasons. On LUS, it's high line averages. On LAA, it's the trips are not covered.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hancock. Again, we have 1 minute to answer that question. So, Mr. Ross, a reply to that?
Well, again, I agree. Anything that'll help out the reserves, I'm all for. And I'm all for reducing the number of reserves by allowing other people to fly those trips, but not at the expense of losing any bodies to furlough. I believe what we need is we need better wages so that flight attendants don't have to fly 140 hours and 170 hours. Those trips that the other flight attendants are flying at 140, they could be going to the flight attendants who are on reserves, reducing the need for possible furloughs at some time because of the structure of the preferential bidding, and hard 40 when it kicks in the optimizer. Reserve flight attendants are there for the flexibility of the trips that aren't covered, and we need to provide them the ability to have a stable income month after month, year after year.
All right. Mr. Hancock, you get the last word on this. 1 minute to refute that last answer.
Thank you. I think Bob and I may have actually found an area of disagreement in that I do not think that the role of the union is to maximize the head count. I recognize that generates more income for the union, but I think that the role of the union is to get the benefits that the membership desires. And our membership has made it very clear that they want the flexibility to fly high time when they want to fly high time and fly low time when they want to fly low time. And I will work to do that. I do not favor a hard cap on hours so that we have more people, more heads. And I agree with Bob that I think there should be more hard days off on reserve, and the reserve guarantee should be higher. I think that reserve is one of those issues that we continue to struggle with, and in my administration, it will be one of our most important issues to deal with.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you both. That's 3 questions. We're about halfway through. So for our 4th question, again, we're very straightforward in these. Let me ask you, implementing a preferential bidding system has been a real struggle on the LUS side. What will you do to improve the preferential bidding system? Let's start with Mr. Hancock this time. 2 minutes to answer that question, sir.
Well, preferential bidding system. Anyone that tells you that there's a simple answer, a simple solution to preferential bidding just doesn't understand the problem. The issues with PBS are more than just PBS. There is the ETB and the ISAP. And in fact, a lot of the problems that we just throw in the bucket PBS have been the length of the lockout period with ISAP and ETB. The first and foremost thing we can do is somehow beat out of this management team to bring down the line averages. The unrealistically high line averages are driving unneeded and expensive reserves, disrupting the balancing of trips within the block, and busting seniority to fill up the blocks. The higher line average is some benefit that the company thinks they're getting out of preferential bidding. And there may be some benefit to them, but until we are all getting benefits, they can't have all of the benefit. The second thing management is having trouble understanding when looking at the language in the JCBA, which came out of the Red Book, is the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. The PBS language was already in the AFA contract when we merged, so an awful lot of the American Airlines management people were not there to negotiate the language, do not understand how that works. They think that the language there was intended to be like minimum standards they must meet, and that's not what it was. It was there to illustrate the way the system is to run. And frankly, I've got no problem in taking that equity argument to arbitration if that's what it's going to take to get this management system, this management to work on the system and make it work. I will tell you, we are not going to go forward to LAA with the way the system is running right now. I hear a lot of, it's programming. Well, I'll tell you, I've got a BS in information systems, and that BS means they can't BS me about the programming. I'm not going to let it happen.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hancock. Mr. Ross, the same question. What would you do to improve the PBS?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't know a whole lot about the PBS system other than to know I went on strike in 1993 because it was part of the contract that we were presented at that time. I'm not a big favor of preferential bidding. 1993, and we're at this now, over 20 some odd years later, and we still don't have a preferential bidding system that everybody can agree on. And I think there's one area that Patrick and I can agree. These preferential bidding systems need to be fixed before it's introduced to the flight attendants. It can have no way of management monkeying around with the numbers at Christmas time or any other time they decide to stack the deck. And one of the ways to lower line averages, I believe, is to get rid of the hard 40. The hard 40 implemented with the preferential bidding system caps the bottom end of your line at 40 hours. To relax that and reduce it, you can reduce those line averages so that flight attendants who want to fly 20 hours, other flight attendants can go from 80 to 85 and up. When you squish all of your hours between 40 and 85 to 90 hours, of course, people are going to have much higher line averages. And these people down here can't move them around. So I think one of the areas that we need to look at and approach the company is to do what they offered to do, is take the hard 40 away. I don't care if it's a soft 40. I fly more than 40. I fly over 100 hours every month. But a soft 40 would at least allow a person to adjust their schedules as need be and then build their schedules back up. On the preferential bidding system, we've got a long ways to go before it should be implemented to everyone. And I'm here to help out Legacy US any way I can. I understand that it's working for a lot of people, and I can't fault that. If it's working, let's take what's working and move it forward. If it's here, it is part of the contract. I personally don't think that preferential bidding and all the Swiss cheese language of our contract and the to be determined is all based on a preferential bidding system that comes in 2017. That's not even fixed completely for us yet, is something that we should have ever looked at.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're still talking about the preferential bidding system. Mr. Hancock, 1 minute to respond to that answer.
Thank you. I don't know that I disagree with you about the hard 40. I don't agree with your analysis on the effect of that. Let me illustrate that. Say we've got 200 hours that you and I have to cover next month, and I drop to 50. How many are you going to have to cover? You're going to have to cover. Getting rid of the hard 40 forces everyone else to fly higher. What's that mean? Higher line averages and all of the fallout from higher line averages. I do take some comfort in knowing that one of the issues we've had was with ISAP, the Iterative Schedule Adjusting Program, and that is going to be replaced soon, please, with TTS, or Trip Trade System. The ISAP goes through and then goes back through and then goes back through and tries to find. The Trip Trade System is a much more global, intelligent review of all of the trips out there, which gives you a whole lot more flexibility, including for people that want to fly low time. The TTS system can see, yeah, we can cover that without raising the caps and allow that to happen. I'm looking forward to it.
Mr. Ross, you get the last word on the preferential bidding system. 1 more minute, sir.
Again, I'm not an expert on the preferential bidding system. I do know that the hard 40 causes flight attendants to have to keep their hours high. What I've seen from the preferential bidding system is increased the number of flight attendants on reserve. I think that there are situations, there are solutions, and there are people to get those solutions done far prior to 2017 when this thing comes on. And I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that when all flight attendants are subject to the preferential bidding system, and any of the problems that the Legacy US flight attendants are having with it right now get solved soon.
All right, thank you both, gentlemen. We'll move to another question now, a little bit different, really concerns our business here at the APFA. So here's our question. Do you approve of term limits, and why? If you favor those, how would you go about seeing them to fruition? We'll start with Mr. Ross on this one. 2 minutes for an initial answer.
I do believe in term limits, and I believe in an open door to bring in new people into the APFA, people who otherwise wouldn't have opportunities to work in certain positions because they're being held by the same people year after year, decade after decade. I believe term limits in many positions, whether they be elected positions, coordinator positions, appointed positions. I believe that people need to train somebody to come in, take their place, do the job as well as they can, and be prepared to go back out on the line and fly. Thank you.
All right. The same question, Mr. Hancock. How about term limits? Do you approve them? And if you did, what would you do about implementing them?
Thank you, Professor. I absolutely approve of term limits for elected positions. We have people who run year after year after year and are so entrenched that there's sometimes never any opposition. I think term limits will get more fresh blood, more new people, more opportunity for people to participate in the board and all the other elected positions. I am going to take a different approach with some of our other positions here at the union. And just pulling random examples out. We have a flight attendant who has been doing technical work for the APFA for a long time, developed our APFA app, which unfortunately only works on the iPhone and will soon be to Android if I have anything to say about it. And I do not know how you would term limit out a technical specialist like that and hope to find a reasonable replacement. Oh yeah, you could go spend money and hire some professional to do it. But I would be opposed to just arbitrarily eliminating people like that, the people that take care of our phone system, the specialists in processing the SBA grievances and arbitration. The other thing is an awful lot of our specialists, the chairs, chairs. I'm still working on the new language, the coordinators. There's a huge learning curve on some of those. And the training expenses are not insignificant. In order to take on some of those responsibilities and to be ready to go in and go toe-to-toe with management, there's a lot of training and a lot of experiences that are required. I would not encourage the union to double, triple up on those training costs by just some arbitrary number. Having said that, I think that some of our presidents in the past have been pretty weak about getting rid of people that are not doing the job. And part of that's politics. And like I've said before, to me, the work is more important than the politics. I will make sure that people are doing their job or they're not here.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hancock. Still on the issue of term limits. Mr. Ross, a minute to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the gentleman that produced the app, and he's fantastic. Indispensable as far as I'm concerned. But the idea that you're going to have to go out and find somebody to replace anyone, I'm not talking about necessarily replacing somebody we need, but we can certainly augment them with other people. But I know somebody already who's a new hire, is fantastic at web designs and app designs, and he's willing to come in and do it for free. So there are people out there that are ready to come in, take place, and learn it. And I'm not even suggesting that that's the person I'm going to replace with. But what I am suggesting is there are people out there who are right here within our ranks who have those talents, and I think we need to go out and seek them.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Mr. Hancock, you get the last minute on this issue of term limits.
Thank you, Professor. I agree with Bob. There are other people out there that are interested in doing work, and I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of is making sure that we have an outreach to the new hires. When I walk through our help center, easily half of the people back there are less than 3 or 4 years seniority. So in some respects, we're doing a job. In other respects, we are not in bringing new hires in. That's one of the reasons I was particularly proud that I was able to convince Nicole Derrick to run on my slate for secretary. She's 4. Now, she's junior, so she always says, oh, it's almost 5, but she's really 4 years seniority. Because I thought it was really important that new hires have a voice, a representative here. Their concerns are very different. My, as a 31-year flight attendant, have very different concerns than a 5-year flight attendant. And I'm so pleased that Nicole will hopefully be here to represent the new hire people.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you both. We've come to our last question in today's debate. Our last question, question number 6. And this is a bit of a long one. So if you needed me to repeat it, I'll certainly be willing to do that. The Dallas Morning News reported last month that Americans' pension funding obligations to the LAA pensions could become a multi-billion-dollar problem when the special funding rates expire in 2017. What do you think is the best path forward to address this problem that threatens another bankruptcy? We'll start with Mr. Hancock on this one.
Thank you, Professor. I am familiar with the special funding rates because our union worked hard to get those back in 2006 and 7. The issue is American Airlines has these huge pension payments coming up, and they're just ignoring that reality. And I have some really good ideas on what we can do about it, but I want to send the message to management right now. How we are not going to fix it is labor is not going to pay for it again. Let me give you an example of what's going on. Say you have this huge credit card debt. You had all kinds of issues. The kids needed braces, the dog had a tumor, the cat needed braces, and now you can't even afford to make the minimum monthly payments. So you go to the credit card company and say, hey, if I don't get a lower monthly payment, I'm going to declare bankruptcy. And they say, oh, no, we'll give you a lower rate for 10 years. They don't forgive the debt. They just give you a lower monthly payment, which means the debt is growing because you're not even paying enough to cover the interest. Fast forward a while. Now you're doing really good. In fact, you have enough money sitting there on the desk to make all of those missed payments and then some. So what does a prudent person do? We don't know by looking at American. They're doing the equivalent of, going and buying a boat or throwing a party for all their friends and giving them money through this stock buyback program. And then, we'll slash the price of the tickets. We'll gain market share. So the airplanes are completely full. Non-rev travel is worthless. And one canceled flight causes chaos because there's no seats left to rebook people. So we've got to send these people over to Delta and United. Oh, Delta won't take our $49 ticket? Oh, I guess we have to pay Delta $400 to carry you. It's time to fix it now. We have the money. We need to make the payments now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hancock. The same question, a very difficult one about pensions. Mr. Ross.
Well, if somebody's been flying as long as I do, or have, should be a lot more up on pensions. But unfortunately, I've been out flying to pay the bills and not even thinking about my pension because my retirement's now farther along. And I have to give it to Mr. Patrick Hancock here because he is the retirement specialist and he's a much better knowledge than I am, I'll admit it. I know the flight attendants are still waiting on the ruling from arbitrator on their pre-funding. This ruling was supposed to have been made in December, if I'm not correct. That was put off, I understand, because of health conditions, the flu. I'm on my third day of antibiotics right now from bronchitis, and I'm here. And I never know the flu to take 2 or 3 months to get over. I think it's time we found out what's going on with the pre-funding. When it comes to retirements and pensions, I actually think that he's got the expertise in that area. And I'd invite him to be my retirement specialist going on in my next 4 years as the president. Thank you.
All right. We still have a minute for each candidate on this. So on this issue of pensions, a reply to that particular answer, Mr. Hancock?
Thank you, Professor. And thank you for the job offer,
You're welcome.
should I not win. Like I said, the time to fix this is now. Jet fuel in the third quarter was $1.69 a gallon. We haven't seen that in years. Even a buffoon like Frank Lorenzo could make money at an airline with jet fuel at $1.69 a gallon. The problem is they're not making the right decisions. And if this management team will not make the grown-up decisions to pay your debts when you have the money, we're going to have to go back to Washington and get Washington to legislate some simple common sense. And I hate to say it, but this whole special funding rates that expire in 2017 is only half the problem. The Dallas Morning News missed that the other half of the problem is that we're about to change the mortality tables. If you're trying to figure out how much do I need to save for retirement, you have to guess how long you're going to live. We're all living longer. They're going to change the mortality tables, and all of a sudden, the pensions are even more underfunded.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Mr. Ross, the last word on this question of pensions.
Well, I definitely think that if they're going to change the mortality table, I want to be a part of that because I'm assuming that they're going to push it up. We still need to do something about our retirement. We need to stop looking at the rainy days ahead, and we need to start capitalizing on the sunny days we have right here in front of us. And again, I plan on doing everything in my part to look after our retirees, our pensions. As I've said before, in order to bring the new hires up, bring more people in the front door, we've got to allow a graceful ending to those who have had a long career. And I think it's time that we've done that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Ross. All right, gentlemen, that's all of the questions that I have for you. We do have time reserved for each candidate to make a closing statement. Again, by various of our coin toss at the beginning, we'll start with Mr. Ross.
I want you to know that there's going to be a lot of changes. There needs to be a lot of changes. There's so much more that needs to be said on what I plan to bring to the APFA that can't be said in 3 minutes. There's so much more about my plans, my platforms, what we can do, but I do know this, that I cannot accomplish anything in the state that we're in. We have got to come together, and I'm here to help bridge the gap and the divides. I believe that we cannot be a powerful force going into negotiations. We're going to start our negotiating committee set up here in a very short year and a half or 2 years. And we can't go anywhere if we're still in a divided, fractured, splintered state. I'm a pilot with an airline transport rating. I'm an Air Force veteran as an aircraft mechanic. I plan on using those skills to bring our pilots union and our mechanics unions together, reach out to our agents. They can't come to us until we've fixed our own problems inside in a very, very short time. Once we're solidified, a strong voice, we can reach out to the other unions nationwide to form a strong coalition of unions against management. It doesn't have to be an adversarial, but it has to be strong. And one of the best defenses is a strong and unified membership. This election is not about me or you, Patrick. This is about empowering the membership. That's really what we need to do, because they've really felt disengaged and disenfranchised. It's about restoring our union back to the membership, as it should be. It's about trust, because ultimately, no matter how you vote on any issue, you're supposed to trust your union. And I want that again. I want people to dig out their union pins and put it on because they want to, not because they feel they have to. I want them to feel that their $41 a month is a bargain. And that can happen, but we have to make it happen from inside. We have to have a membership-driven, unified membership that's in a bottom-up philosophy, not the top-down, we know what's best anymore. The only thing that should be top-down within APFA is respect. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the other presidents that stepped up. Kimberly, Brian, Stephen, Lori, Andrea, and Rock. I invite them to stay a part of the process, to come and help fix this union, to be a part of it. And if elected, join me to help rebuild APFA into the great union it was. And Patrick, the same for you. Offers there, and I appreciate you stepping up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Very touching. Mr. Hancock, again, an opportunity for a closing statement.
Thank you, Professor. And I, too, want to thank Bob for stepping up to run and his professionalism in this debate, allowing the members to compare and contrast our skills, our experience, our temperament that each of us can bring to this position. Do not discount for a minute the very real anger that so many of us feel about the recent past in our union and the past administration. But as we work beyond that, we have to ask, what is the best path forward for this union? We must change. And change is difficult. But change does not equal growth. Smart change equals growth, and we have to be smart. Do we want to merge our two work groups into one, or do we want to stay divided? Our brothers and sisters who've gone through mergers before, sometimes several, have told us over and over that continued division and exclusion only helps management. It provides an excuse to delay and defer the rightful benefits of a merger that we should all be getting. I am tired of waiting. We should all be tired of waiting. This management team is looking for any excuse to delay FOI, to push off the flexibility and protections that flow from full integration. 85% of the JCBA is out of the LUS Red Book. We have labor protective provisions, LPPs, and scope and pay protection that are the envy of the industry. Just enough with the as soon as practical, and enough with the to be determined, and enough with the operation permitting, and enough with the crew schedule permission will not be unreasonably denied. I want AA to take notice that under a Hancock administration, the delays and excuses that this corporation, that I remind you is making billions of dollars every quarter, will not be tolerated. We will use our collective strength. I will again take us to the street. I will again take us to Washington, and we will generate the pressure that this management team seems to need in order to do the right thing. But I can't do it alone. I am asking for your vote and your support for Patrick Hancock, Nicole Derrick, and Craig Gunter. Voting for Hancock, Derrick, and Gunter is the only way left for LUS and LAA to both be represented in the national officer positions in our union. Why do we need that unity? We need that unity for strength. Ours is an honorable profession. Ours is a proud profession. It is time to reclaim our profession. Please visit our website and our Facebook page, ask your questions, get informed, and vote.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Well, first of all, that concludes our debate. Our introductory concluding remarks have been made. So let me, first of all, please thank both of our candidates, Mr. Ross, Mr. Hancock. Thank you very much for your candor, for your direct response to all of our questions, and respect for one another. Thank you both, gentlemen. Second, let me thank you to all of our listening audience. Ladies and gentlemen, you've participated by listening in this wonderful exchange of ideas. In just this short time, we've discussed a number of very important topics to the APFA, both the future of the union, the issue of a merger, the issue of reserves, as well as preferential bidding systems, term limits, and even pensions. So there's quite a lot going on right now. For our office here in Euless and the APFA, I'll say this is a very momentous election for everyone in our membership. We encourage you here with this preview of your candidates to get out and vote, check the website, and cast your voice in this incredibly momentous decision. For the National Balloting Committee here at our office of the APFA, this is Dr. Brian Lane saying thank you very much
Thank you.
and good evening.
And thank
Thank you.